this is an off-year election. It's not the sexiest election. We probably won't have an election night special, so to speak. But there are some key races that will have a profound impact on not just their individual districts, but the state of Washington as a whole. As you know, we are overwhelmingly one-party state. Democrats have very strong majorities in the House and the Senate, and obviously control the governor's office and all other statewide elected offices. But just 1 to 2 seat switch in the House or Senate can make it so that can go from Democrats can push through anything they want to all of a sudden Democrats actually have to consult Republicans to be able to get something done. And even if you are a hardcore Democrat, you have to acknowledge that a little bit of checks and balances always leads to better policies. So the Seattle Times, this is not a Seattle Times is trash segment. This is a compliment for the Seattle Times editorial board, which every once in a while decides to pretend as if it's reasonable. So, pretend away. They said in an op-ed, these candidates in 3 key legislative races focus on results, new taxes. And I thought this was great. So they're basically endorsing this trio of candidates. 2 of them are Democrats and 1 of them is a Republican. So Kevin Schilling, who's running for state rep in the 33rd, which is the Burien area. Democrat Amy Wallen, who's running for state senate in the 48th, which is the Kirkland area. And then Chad Magendanz, who's running for state senate in the 5th, which is the Issaquah area. And he's the Republican of the 3 of them. But the Seattle Times editorial board basically said, look, you got to put party aside because these 3 have shown that they're willing to scrutinize budgets. They're willing to scrutinize taxes. They don't just sign off on the party line. And that's what we need in Olympia right now. And I could not agree more. So I want to focus today on the race for the 5th legislative district for state senate. So again, it's one of those districts that's been reconfigured a little bit in recent years, but it essentially is like Issaquah, a little south of Issaquah. So if you're in the 5th, you probably know that this is a race that's going to be on your ballot. So it is pitting Victoria Hunt, the Democrat, who was installed after the Bill Ramos, the former state senator, passed away late last year, and then Chad Magendanz, who's the Republican running. And look, this is a no-brainer to me. First of all, Victoria Hunt, she has been absolutely a carbon copy of whatever the Democratic Party wants her to be. And this is a district that's pretty purple. And so, for that district east of Seattle, this isn't a district that wants Seattle-type policies. And that's what Victoria Hunt is going to vote for. And we need, frankly, a little bit of check on the party in power. And so Chad Magendanz is going to be the perfect person for that job. So we asked Chad if he could pop on the show with us this week and talk to us a little bit about his campaign and what he's been out there doing so that he can win. Chad, welcome back to Undivided.
Thanks, Brandi. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I got my ballot in the mail. Unfortunately, you're not in my district anymore, so I couldn't circle the circle in for you. But I got mine filled out right away, but people will have those ballots in hand. The first question is obvious. You lost in the primary, so what have you been doing between then and now to try to change things?
Well, the performance compared to last year is actually it was better on primary night. I was up by about 1 point to 1.5 points, and I only have to close 2 points. Typically, I underperform in the primary because I'm a moderate. I pick up a lot of swing voters who don't participate as much as the hard Ds and hard Rs. And so on primary night, I was looking at over a dozen districts that had increases between 10 and 20%, typically blue precincts, not districts, precincts. And so, I was foundationally doing well. And then those last 2 days came in, and the last 2 days really emphasized the turnout issue. We didn't have many conservatives at all turn in their ballot on the Monday and Tuesday leading up to the election. And of course, those dropped on Thursday and Friday. And as bad as it was in my district, it was even worse for Michelle in the 26, because she was leading up until then, and she dropped to about 48. So I typically pick up about 3% between the primary and the general. And so that would have placed me nicely if I had kept that 47% position, because I'd closed more than half the gap already. So we're going to have to work a little harder and a little bit more emphasis on the get out the vote work. But frankly, it's a lot easier lift to convince somebody who's going to vote for you just to turn in their ballot than it is to convince somebody who wouldn't vote for you to change their vote.
Yeah, 100%. And the numbers we're talking about here, just for context, it's like 3,000 votes. I mean, in the
Yeah.
primary that's separated. So 10% sounds like a lot, but we're talking like 3,000 votes. And that difference can make such a substantial impact for the state. It's really wild when you think about it. So a couple key things have happened between the primary and now. You once again got the endorsement of the Seattle Times. I don't know why the Seattle Times finds you so palatable. Apparently you're the only Republican who they'll ever endorse. So I want to talk about that in a moment.
I'm happy to be their token Republican, but I think it's a statement as to just how far to the left my opponent is. She has the most partisan voting record of anybody who's represented our district, going back to when they first started publishing results 34 years ago. And so I'm not really running against her. I'm running against her party and her handlers because she's just been lockstep with every single vote. And frankly, there were a lot of gifts that she gave us this last session. 9.4 billion in new taxes for the operating budget, 3.2 billion for the transportation budget, and another 6 cents on the pump. And then we don't talk much about the 2 billion that they authorized councilmatically for cities and counties to increase for sales tax. So roughly $15 billion in new taxes. That's over $2,000 per family. If someone broke into my house and stole $2,000, I'd feel violated. And yet we keep electing these people. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So the Seattle Times endorsement, as much as I dislike the Seattle Times, I'm glad you got that endorsement. It's important. The people who read the Seattle Times, are some of those people you need to reach, because as much as I think you need conservatives to turn in their ballot, you can't win that district with just conservative votes. You need people who are independent, moderate Democrats, which was the Seattle Times recently did kind of another endorsement, but they included you with some moderate Democrats who are running and basically said this slate, Chad, Amy Wallen, and Kevin Schilling, we need them in Olympia because they're more reasonable. So what has been some of the things that you're hoping as you go out there will resonate with moderate Democrats and independent voters who might be turned off by the Republican label?
Well, the two campaigns that the other side runs against me is Orange Man Bad, which is just their standard one, and then they run Dobbs, the Dobbs decision, and so as a person who's got now 8 Seattle Times endorsements, always got an outstanding rating from the Municipal League, I'm fairly inoculated to the Orange Man Bad stuff, and the Dobbs decision stuff. I thought I was inoculated from too, because I've been pro-choice from the beginning, was even endorsed by Planned Parenthood way back before Planned Parenthood went off the deep end. And I thought that was a non-issue. I supported Initiative 120. That's the rule of the land. We're just going to move on to other things. But no, the hit pieces that are coming out right now are saying I support a ban on abortion, which has never been the case. It's really kind of crazy, their strategies for trying to paint me as an extremist, which, if you talk to anybody in my own party, I am exactly the opposite. I'm too moderate in their eyes.
It's really lazy, in my opinion. I wish voters would see through it that, oh my gosh, how many years are you going to campaign on Orange Man Bad and the abortion issue before voters actually hold you to account for some of the things that are really, really impacting their lives? So just one more time, Chad, what's at stake here? If you're to get this seat, what would that mean, not just for your district, but for the state?
So if either Michelle or I pick up a seat this election cycle, we break the supermajority in the Senate, and that means that the other side has to get some Republican involvement to pass bonds, and it means that we can stop the worst of the worst bills that come through. And so we're actually someone that they'll have to negotiate with. Now, I served 2 terms when we had a bipartisan legislature. We had to do that for every single bill. And I'd like to get back to that situation. And we're not that far, because if Michelle and I both pick up seats, we're only 4 away from an outright majority. We were actually in a worse position in 2008, where we had fewer seats in the Senate. And by 2012, we had the majority coalition caucus, where a few moderate Democrats had come over. And I like the fact that Seattle Times is calling out the moderate Democrats, because we might need their help in order to stop some of the craziness happening from the agenda that's just getting steamrolled through Olympia right now. Yeah. So that moderate influence, we called it ourselves the roadkill caucus. As that influence builds, we can stop a lot of the extremes on both sides of the aisle. But right now, the dominant party are the Democrats, because they have that supermajority in both chambers, and really just one party rule with the governor's mansion and the judicial branch.
Yeah, it's common sense. So, and I was happy to also see some commercials on the air as well. I'm glad that you guys were able to get that spending and get those commercials up. All right, Chad, any final message to voters?
Send in your ballots and encourage your friends to do the same. That is so critical for this particular race.
Yeah, and I think that's the big message in off your election is you don't think there's a lot on there. It could not be further from the truth this time around. There's so many important races. And I do want to, in the interest of transparency, I think it's obvious that I support Chad's campaign. I have also contributed as a person individually to his campaign as well. So just in the interest of full transparency, because I know what's at stake in that race. Also, the big races, really quick, we'll tick through them. Similar situation for state senate in the 26th legislative district. We've got to get Michelle Caldeer in. She is a Republican. She's running against Deb Krishnadansan, who was the installed Democrat. She filled the seat that was left when Emily Randall was elected to Congress. And this just, again, it has really nothing to do with Deb. It doesn't. It's a numbers game, and we need to make sure that there isn't enough of a majority in the Senate for them to push through quite literally anything they want. Different situation in the 33rd legislative district, which is the Burien area. In the state house race, it's 2 Democrats on your ballot. And as I've been saying, you cannot, as a Republican, if you are one or tend to vote red, you can't just sit it out. You cannot just sit it out. It's so important to vote for Kevin Schilling, the mayor of Burien, who's been very good on public safety and pro-business and taxation. So we need to make sure that Kevin Schilling gets that seat. State Senate, also a situation with 2 Democrats here. The more moderate Democrats, this is the Kirkland area, 48th legislative district. Amy Wallen really is the only reasonable choice if you're concerned about taxation and the business climate, et cetera. She's not perfect. I'd like to see some better things on public safety from her, but not even comparable. Unfortunately, she had a really poor performance in the primary, so I don't know if Amy Wallen can come back, but that would be my recommendation. And then I didn't put it on here, but just a quick note on King County Executive, Claudia Balducci. I don't like either of the options for King County, but I voted when I filled out my ballot yesterday for Claudia Balducci, so I think that she can win. Gurmai Zahala is too far to the left for my liking.